thank you guys for joining WNUR 89.3 FM, introducing the M Machine. Just to start off, do you guys mind introducing yourselves and talking a little bit about where you're from?
Sure. My name is Swardlick, and this is Eric. We're the M Machine, and we live in San Francisco.
Awesome. So starting off, I know you guys formed an SF as well around 2011. How did you two meet and kind of start the project? And how did M Machine come together? I know it was originally a pants party, correct?
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. We met in college actually, down at UC Santa Barbara.
Okay,
in
awesome.
The mid 2000s. And then after school, or at the end of school, we started writing music together. And then after that, we moved up to San Francisco and started Pants Party shortly thereafter, and which was more like a blog house,
we used to call it Fidget back then.
Fidget, yeah. It's it's pretty high energy, kind of crazy, a little bit of humor thrown in there. Mm-hmm. And then, we did that for a couple of years, and then we started writing some more cinematic, melodic, emotional electronic music, and then we were like, maybe we shouldn't, make this, a tongue-in-cheek thing. Maybe we should actually, try to do more of a serious project. So then we were like, let's do something at first we were called Metropolis, but then we had to change our name due to some legal issues, so we landed on the M Machine, and that was in 2010, 2011, and that was how it all started.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And were either of you music students, or did you just...
No, Eric and I have really similar musical upbringings, we both played piano and guitar and sang growing up, but no serious sort of music aspirations until the end of college. So Eric goes off to Berlin his senior year. I guess that's 2007 you were in mm-hmm. Berlin.
That's awesome.
And then he came back and he was preaching about Justice and Boys Noise and all this Berlin techno he heard, and going out to clubs. And that was a totally new thing for me. I didn't grow up listening to a lot of electronic music. So we started writing just for fun, just because the software was free and it was pretty easy to sort of just jump into it. Mm-hmm. And then when we moved up to San Francisco, we were definitely still sort of telling our parents that the idea was to get involved in some kind of a professional audio field, not necessarily an art-driven, or an artist career, but that's definitely what we wanted to do. And within about 2 years, it was clear that we could at least have a go at it. We could, people were listening at least a little bit. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah. I was actually in Berlin last summer for studying abroad. It's an amazing place. Yeah, really neat city.
So good.
Yes. I guess one question, you guys mentioned Metropolis. I know you guys created Metropolis Part 1 and 2. It sounds like it was inspired off of your original name even. Mm-hmm. I love the movie Metropolis. How does that fit into the concept you guys created?
Yeah.
And was that all inspired, I suppose?
Yeah, it's just something we saw haphazardly, and it was very inspiring. We were just saying, that movie is approaching 100 years old, and it's definitely prototypical for all sci-fi, in any categories, special effects or, mech or robot or android design, all of that stuff. So we were just excited about it, and so when we started writing those first 2 EPs, they were really heavily conceptual, and it was everything we were doing was drawing from that movie and that sort of dystopian sort of society sci-fi sort of theme. So it made a lot of sense to theme the project that as well. Mm-hmm. And obviously we've explored, just hundreds and thousands of other, interesting pieces of media and movies and books and everything. So now it doesn't necessarily, it's not a summary of the band as a whole, but it's where we began for sure. And we got pretty deep into it. That first 2 EP release, which we always looked at as an album, but back then they weren't doing full lengths on OWSLA, and we ended up writing a little short story that sort of corresponded with it. Each song was a chapter in the story, and so it was definitely heavily influenced at the get-go.
Mm. Yeah. And that story, it's available on your website, correct?
Yeah.
Awesome. And how did you you guys already mentioned, how did you get involved in OWSLA? That's Skrillex's label.
This is a very relevant place to be.
Yeah,
you should tell the story.
Okay, so we actually met Sonny when he was playing his first show in Santa Cruz as Skrillex at Motive, which is actually where we're playing tonight.
That's awesome.
which is a tiny little club, and yeah, we were driving down with our manager at the time, and he was like, "Oh, we're gonna pick up this guy Skrillex at the airport, and we're gonna drive him down to Santa Cruz. So like, you guys should get to know this dude. He's probably gonna be a pretty big deal in a couple years." And like, little did we know, yeah. So we picked him up and we drove down with him, and we were listening to all sorts of music, and then we ended up later on showing him some of our stuff that we were working on. And he's like, "Oh, this is great. Like, when it's all finished up, send it my way, and we'll see what we can do." And then a year later or so, he was starting up OWSLA, and we sent him a few things, and he was like, "Hell yeah, let's do it." So yeah, just super friendly guy from the get-go, and just stayed in touch, and that was that.
Awesome. And he's, if I believe, he's located in LA, correct? OWSLA
Yeah.
is. Do you guys have any? Do you still live in San Francisco then, when you're not touring, etc.?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, this one, yeah. What has been your favorite place to play?
Oh man, I've gotten this question for so long, and like I had a default for a long time. Years ago, we opened for Skrill at Red Rocks in Colorado.
Oh, the amphitheater.
Yeah, and that was a pretty special show. 10,000 people, and anyway, blah blah blah. Totally life changing and really important. But it's just a long time ago, and I think since then, I've aside from that by far being the biggest show we've ever done, I think we've had some other ones that are like worth mentioning, just because if you've ever listened to an M-Machine interview, we always mention that. But I mean, we've been to Burning Man since then, and Shambhala, and played some really amazing smaller nightclubs that have had probably just as important of an impact. Burning Man is a great place to play music, especially if you in any way ever feel a little bit confined by your project, which I think every artist does, and that's a great place to go and play whatever the fuck you want to play for as long as you want to play it. And Shambhala is an incredible experience because each stage is booked independent of every other stage, and so like each one has its own little culture and artists who've been coming back to that stage for years. And yeah, and then getting to go to a place like Output in Brooklyn definitely had a big sort of impact on us too. I would say that's probably the top 3 that I can think of off the top of my head that
awesome.
Aren't Red Rocks.
Sure. And similar?
I think, yeah, I totally agree with all 3 of those. Those were all incredible, really. Just, great little moments in our career.
Yeah, that's awesome. And have you guys ever had, I guess, what have been the challenges of being a duo and performing? And how does that affect your musical process as well?
Yeah, great question. Let's go back a little bit, because we used to be trio. And so for the first maybe 2 years of touring, we were really into doing this live electronic show. And so we weren't DJing. And we focused on that and practiced that a lot. And that was something that we were really proud of. And it made a lot of sense to have 3 people. And in hindsight now, it doesn't seem that coincidental that once Andy decided to go do other things, that's our ex-third bandmate, that Eric and I got real serious about DJing, and it's like we were scraping our DJ set together back then. We were running Ableton Live to do it, and just because that's what we knew, because we'd always done live shows. And then yeah, I mean, once you switch to CDJs, that becomes something to sort of geek out on and get really excited about. And so that's what we've been doing, and that's what we've been serious about ever since then, really. And it's great to DJ with 2 people for a lot of reasons. One is because just like the format of back-to-back is really fun, because you feed off of each other. But also, you're both doing the same thing, and so, when we would do live, we had very sort of distinct responsibilities. I sing this part, you play that part, and this effect happens here, and the show starts to feel a little bit mechanical, which obviously is not true for, bands like traditional bands. And I think eventually, since our live electronic thing wasn't becoming that organic, totally, I don't want to say improvised, because of course bands rehearse, but just that feeling of like, I'm creating this sound right here, and that's all the audience hears is what I'm making on this guitar, what I'm adding. for us, DJing has felt more like that than the live show ever did, and we like doing it together. It's like a pretty fun time. We look forward to it. So.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And when you guys actually create, your music, do you guys have different responsibilities, or how do you go about that process?
We pretty much do the same thing, and so we'll both start songs separately usually, and then sort of reconvene and be like, hey, check this out. This is what I'm working on right now, and if we're both vibing on something, then we'll kind of come together or start passing it back and forth, working separately.
So it's like pretty collaborative for each song, then it sounds like.
Yeah,
It can be.
Yeah,
Sometimes they get really spearheaded individually as
totally,
well.
yeah. But it's totally not. We don't have like set responsibilities or anything like that. Like, we both write chords, we both write percussion, we both do it all. We both sing, so it's like, it's kind of, if we both feel something, then we'll both work on it together. But
Yeah, no division of labor. at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. Awesome. Pardon me. Have you ever had any issues in like a venue or touring that have been like dramatic? Like, what has been your least enjoyable experience, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, now that I think about it, we got to rewind for a bit. We travel now with flash drives, and that's it. And so, like, these days, sometimes it's rare that we even bother sound checking, just because every nightclub has like the standard equipment that we need, and we can hear perfectly fine if it's all functioning before. But rewind the clock a bit, and we used to travel with a whole slew of keyboards and MIDI controllers and computers. And yeah, I mean, if you can imagine a problem,
and a stage piece.
not to mention the M, right? I was going to get to the M. So if you can imagine a problem, we definitely experienced it when we were touring live. So computers freezing on stage. We had a computer one time that would consistently pop this error message up in the middle of our show, and on the dot you could count down. You had 30 minutes before the computer was going to crash and you were going to have to reboot before we could play music again. And we were never at that point where there was somebody off on side stage running some backup system or crossing over to like a redundant computer.
So it was all on you.
This is us. Yeah, it's just that what you see is what you get, and that's how it's always been. And that includes when we had the M, and the M was I can never remember what we listed as the weight when we would write it in for customs or whatever, but I think it was like 1,000 pounds or something.
Jeez.
And it lived on trussing that that we sourced, and it was all built by us. And yeah, it had its moments. It sat on these big diesel tripods, and it fell on stage one time, and it was fortunately while we were setting it up. I can't remember where that was. It's Canada.
I don't know. Yeah.
It was before a string of Canadian dates that were like at some funny smaller places like Saskatoon and Winnipeg, and yeah, we were setting it up, and it started to just sort of lean forward. I don't remember what it was that was broken about it, but it came down, and it was made of these acrylic panels, and everything was soldered by Andy himself. So it's like a lot of shit needed to be repaired after that. But the first time we had a couple hours before a gig. This is during the language tour, which was 2012.
Yep.
And that was a machine before Matt Zoe, before Porter Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
Why we were even allowed to have a stage piece and that kind of a rig as the double opener for a show is just, that's a whole nother can of worms. But anyway, so yeah, we've had some dramas on stage, no question.
It sounds like you guys are like pretty hands-on with the different things you've made. I've heard that your new project, it's also pretty integrated into the tech realm.
Yeah.
I was wondering, can you guys speak a little bit about how you plan to release it and about that?
Yeah, well, what's cool about what's going on right now is that we have been referring to Andy as our ex-third bandmate, and he's not writing and touring with us anymore, but he's still getting involved as much as possible. So the M that we were referring to, that big stage piece, Andy designed, built, and wrote the software for that. He did the whole thing. We're basically grunt labor when it comes to working on some of these tech and sort of like science projects that Andy gets involved in. So the one we're referring to now is Glare.fm. So our album is Glare, and then Glare.fm it's really just a website, but it runs like a web app. And the idea behind it was how can we pre-sale or pre-release our album in a social way. So we just wanted to see if there was a way that we could get people to be sharing the music in person over a conversation, as opposed to just like an anonymous tweet or links or Facebook posts or whatever. And so what we landed on was a web app. And if if I already have it, and let's say that it began, because it began on the 3 phones of, me and Eric and Andy's phones, and then I want to give it to somebody, I can unlock it for them so long as we're near each other physically or geographically near each other.
Okay.
And so I can unlock the album for you, and then you can go ahead and unlock it for other people so long as you're near
So it
them.
really like it engages and like creates social interaction, and then because you have to
Yeah.
actually be near the person.
That's the idea.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
and it throttles the spread of it like a lot, so it can feel a little counterintuitive to people sometimes. But it's free, and it's a pre-release. It's a pre-sale thing, and so up until our album comes out on the 23rd this month, so just a little while here, everybody who's gotten it has gotten it from somebody who's been like, "Hey, I have a thing, and like, you should hear it," and it shows us and everybody who has it where on Earth that's happened, and it's made its way from San Francisco to Brisbane, Australia, and I think we're in 9 countries, and there's thousands of accounts, and it's been pretty cool to watch. You have a visual network of everybody that has the album because of you, so like a little web.
Oh, so you can see the
Yeah, it
nodes.
starts with you.
Yeah, and
Spreads
so
out.
yeah, it's been a really cool thing to sort of just like watch that grow. But yeah, that's Andy. Now he's a full-time programmer, and he's been moonlighting this thing for us just because he's passionate about the album.
So you guys you've basically created a network platform for your music.
Yeah, just a way to geographically confirm that 2 people are in fact near each other without some significant hacking, and of course like if somebody's willing to go through that kind of trouble, they're certainly welcome to. And then you get the album. You start off with 4 songs, and then each time you share it with somebody else, you get 2 more. So 4 shares gets you the whole thing.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. That's it for me. Thank you guys so much. I'm excited, one, for your set later, and also for Glare, which you mentioned was coming out 23rd?
Yeah, February 23rd. That is
Okay.
this Thursday.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
New
so-
single is 2 days before, so this coming Tuesday.
Yep.
Sweet.
Yeah. And I think
Thanks,
that's
guys.
it. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Why